Have you ever driven through the wide open plains of the Texas Panhandle and suddenly spotted a building standing all alone? Windows shattered, wooden boards creaking in the wind? You might have just passed through a forgotten town. In Northwest Texas, dozens of towns once thrived, but today they're barely a whisper. Their buildings sit empty. Their roads are swallowed by tall grass. Their stories fading into weathered signs and broken fences. Curious which towns? Let's take a journey into places that once breathed, but now only leave behind shadows in the dirt. If you've ever watched an old Western and wondered, did towns like that really exist? The answer is yes, and Tascosa was one of them. Back in the late 1800s, Tascosa was destined to be the next big thing in the Texas Panhandle. They called it the Cowboy capital of the plains. Bars, gambling halls, and street duels weren't fiction here. They were real life. And if you need proof, the town's old cemetery still holds the graves of gunfighters and ranch hands. Its prime location once gave it a real shot at greatness. But like many frontier towns, Tascosa's fate was tied to railroads and rivers. In 1893, a devastating flood washed away most of the town. And when new rail lines skipped it and Amarillo began to boom, people packed up and left. Today, what's left of Tascosa is preserved by Cal Farley's Boys Ranch, a living relic of what was once a rowdy, roaring slice of the Old West. Tascosa faded with nature, but Glenrio died by policy. Straddling the border between Texas and New Mexico, Glenrio once pulsed with the heartbeat of Route 66, America's most legendary road. The town's buildings literally sit in two states: gas stations in Texas, motels in New Mexico. It was quirky, it was charming, and for a time, it was thriving. Truckers, road trippers, dreamers all passed through. There was a cafe, a movie theater, even a tiny welcome center. But then came Interstate 40, and just like that, Glenrio was cut off. No more travelers, no more business, and like a light slowly dimming, it slipped into silence. Today, you can still see Glenrio's remains. Dusty motels with leaning signs, rusted pumps, and streets that echo only with the wind. Glenrio isn't just a ghost town, it's a portrait of what happens when progress chooses a different path. Not far from the industrial town of Borger, once stood a place with real promise, Plemons. In the early 1900s, this small settlement was named the county seat of Hutchinson County. It had a post office, a general store, and big hopes for the future. But that hope quickly faded when the railroad came, but skipped the town entirely. Like so many small towns in America, Plemons was left behind by the tracks, cut off from people, from goods, and from the flow of life. Its old bridge, once connecting it to the outside world, now stands broken, just a rusted skeleton. Meanwhile, Borger boomed with oil and industry, and Plemons was slowly erased. Today, there's hardly a trace left. No paved roads, no full buildings, just open land, crumbling stone foundations, and a few weathered signs half swallowed by grass. In Plemons, time didn't just slow down, it stopped. And in that stillness, the town is a haunting reminder. Having a spot on the map doesn't guarantee survival. From a town completely gone we move to one that's still alive, but only just. In Cottle County, you'll find Paducah, home to about 900 people today. But walking its streets, you'd think the number was much lower. Many buildings stand empty. Some blocks feel like a museum without a guide. Once, Paducah thrived. There were schools, a hospital, and a main street lined with shops and local pride. Its residents were known for their warmth, relying on farming and small-town services. But over time, the town began to shrink. Young people moved to cities, shops closed, homes were left to decay. Paducah isn't a ghost town yet, but if you visit, you'll likely wonder, how much longer can it hold on? Have you been to Paducah? If so, what did it whisper to you? Not far from Paducah lies another town with a familiar name, Memphis. No, not the famous one in Tennessee, but a much quieter version in the heart of Hall County, Texas. Once, this Memphis had a strong local economy. It was a key stop on the regional rail network, playing a vital role in goods distribution across the Texas Panhandle. The downtown area used to bustle with local stores, gas stations, and cafes, places where neighbors chatted over coffee. The school was full, and the sports field was the heart of the community's celebrations. But slowly, the foundation of that life began to crack. Distribution routes changed, agriculture became less reliable, and Memphis lost its purpose. The young left for bigger opportunities, while the ones who stayed were either too old or too rooted to leave the land they called home. Now, Memphis feels like a grand old house, slowly being abandoned. From a distance, it still looks like a town, but walk its streets, and the silence reveals something else. A space once filled with life, now echoing with absence. It's not off the map yet, but it might soon slip from memory. Out on the flat plains of Deaf Smith County, there's a town with a name that still sparks curiosity, Electric City. Ironically, what's left now is silence. Electric City was built in the early 1900s by the Southwest Public Service Company. The dream? To create a fully self-sustained settlement for power plant workers. Homes were built fast, electricity flowed, and a small community took shape. But like many industrial towns in Northwest Texas, its fate was tied to a single lifeline: power and the people who made it. When nearby energy projects were redirected and logistical needs shifted to bigger cities, Electric City started to fade. There was no slow decline. Once the workforce vanished, so did the life. Today, only a few scattered structures remain. The name Electric City lingers in old archives and forgotten maps. But for most people, this place went dark a long time ago. We end our journey in Perico, once known as Farwell, a small town tucked away in Dallam County, Texas. Back in the day, Perico was a modest but active stop along the Northwest Texas transport routes. With a fairly strategic location, it supported a small population, a general store, a gas station, and fields of farmland. But over time, as highways shifted and traffic rerouted toward faster paths, Perico's heartbeat faded. People moved away, businesses shut down, and no new generation came to take their place. Perico didn't die all at once. It simply lost its meaning, slowly, quietly. Today, just one or two weathered buildings remain, coated in dust and standing still. like quiet sentinels of a story left unfinished. It's the kind of town nobody asks about anymore, yet it endures, holding memories that never found a final word. In the vast land of Northwest Texas, a town's end doesn't always come with disaster. It arrives like a change in season, silent, gradual, and inevitable. A new highway here, a rerouted rail line there, modern machines replacing the hands that once tilled the earth. That's how towns like Perico vanish, not just from maps, but from memory. Still, traces remain. In the peeling wood of an old store, in a faded sign barely hanging on, or in the voice of an old resident who remembers when this place was alive. So if one day you're driving down a long, empty road in the Panhandle and spot a crumbling building standing alone, you may have just passed through a town that time forgot.